On June 22, 2012, Penn State University suffered a spectacular full-scale collapse of its institutional integrity when an assistant football coach, Jerry Sandusky, was convicted of 45 felony counts of unlawful sexual contact with minors. An attorney for one of the victims said he paraded children around like trophies. He was naked with children in the locker room. He was seen by the janitor. He was seen by an assistant coach. It was known by Coach Paterno, by Mr. Spanier, by Mr. Curley, by Mr. Schultz. Penn State's lack of action in launching an investigation would become a nightmare of epic proportions for the university. Its reputation tarnished, the school would ultimately settle with most of Sandusky's victims at a cost running into the tens of millions of dollars, and its football team would receive one of the NCAA's harshest penalties ever meted out to a school. Most significantly, former Penn State President Graham Spanier and other administrators were convicted of several felonies and sentenced to prison for failing to investigate the many complaints of misconduct. Known or should have known. That phrase sets a significant legal hurdle that must be overcome to prevail in a lawsuit of this nature. Most of Penn State's civil and criminal liability did not occur solely because Sandusky was abusing minors, but rather because they clearly knew about it and yet did not act. Knew or should have known means that criminal and civil liability is reduced but not necessarily removed if the organization can prove that they took appropriate action as soon as they discovered the misconduct and that the occurrence was not because of negligence in policy enforcement. In other words, one of an employer's duties is the duty to investigate. Another involves timely investigations. In 2012, a delay in investigating allegations of misconduct in Massachusetts resulted in the largest number of overturned convictions on record. For more than a decade, Annie Ducan, a police chemist from Massachusetts, had been tampering with or falsifying the results of scientific testing being done to determine if a substance in evidence was, in fact, an illegal drug. During the initial investigation, staff turnover, shoddy investigative work, and poor communication slowed down the inquiry. To date, in a process that has not yet concluded, more than 21,000 convictions are being vacated. 4,000 plus of these convictions occurred between when the investigation started and when Ducan was arrested. In the 1990s, a police misconduct case resulted in more than 70 officers of the LAPD being indicted for crimes ranging from obstruction of justice to first-degree murder. In this case, commonly known as the Rampart Scandal, the city of Los Angeles paid tens of millions of dollars in settlements based on a legal precedent called respondeat superior. This term refers to the employer's responsibility for employee misconduct committed on the job. LAPD did conduct investigations into this scandal, but the progress of these investigations was slowed because of due process requirements found in the officers' collective bargaining agreement, as well as some officers who refused to cooperate with investigators. While many of the officers involved were convicted of crimes, respondeat superior required the LAPD to compensate victims and accept responsibility for their officers' actions, even though the actions were illegal. Now that we've covered employer duties and responsibilities, let's go over some prohibited practices, starting by taking a look at libel, slander, and privacy rights. During the 1996 Olympic Games in Atlanta, Eric Rudolph detonated a pipe bomb that killed one person and injured more than 100 others. Rudolph, however, was not immediately a suspect in the case. Instead, the highest suspicion fell on a security guard by the name of Richard Jewell. His employer, among others, publicly disclosed information that was impermissible under privacy laws. These unlawful leaks included private data like his home address, demographic identifiers, and information from pre-employment background checks. Because Jewell did not consent to the disclosure, his right to privacy had been infringed upon. Jewell was also the victim of unlawful inaccurate reporting. Libel is when such a statement is made in print, while slander refers to verbal statements made in public. In the Jewell case, numerous publications printed information about Jewell that was ultimately proven to be false. Several companies paid settlements for leaking information about Jewell that was universally protected from disclosure without consent. Years later, Jewell was exonerated and subsequently sued numerous entities for libel. Most settled with him for undisclosed amounts that were believed to be in the millions of dollars. Employers who are investigating allegations of employee misconduct should release as little information as possible. When information must be released, the employer must ensure that it is accurate. Employers are expressly prohibited from using an investigation as a means to harass or retaliate against an employee. Employees can bring allegations that their employer used an investigation as a weapon to retaliate against them. When such an allegation is made to the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, or EEOC, it will become incumbent on the employer to prove that the investigation was conducted in good faith. By keeping detailed documentation and using a verifiable randomization for things like drug screening, an employer can establish a solid defense against such a claim. Apart from employers such as law enforcement or national defense, there are laws that prohibit or restrict an employer's ability to use a polygraph for employment decisions. For the states that do not ban the use of a polygraph entirely, information obtained during a polygraph is generally confidential, except in the case of certain criminal admission made during the exam. Employers who do require employee polygraphs are usually limited by statute as to how often they can require an employee to submit to a polygraph. To sum up, employers have a duty to investigate all allegations of employee misconduct. These investigations must be conducted in a timely manner before detrimental damage is done. Respondeat superior means that an employer is legally responsible for many of their employees' conduct while at work. Thorough investigations of misconduct can minimize the damage caused by an employee by identifying and stopping misconduct before it is critical. Regardless of industry, employers who become aware of criminal conduct during an investigation must turn over relevant evidence to law enforcement. Employers should limit the disclosure of investigation findings whenever possible. Finally, employers should take care to establish policies for investigations that can be used as an effective defense against accusations of retaliation or harassment.